Hey, it's Dan Larson. Welcome to the newest Synthesize Sunday episode. And today I want to show you how I made one particular sound in this very cool housey groove. So as you may suggest from the title of this video, I'm going to show you how I made the open hi-hat of this loop. Because, you know, it is pretty, well, as I experienced, it's pretty hard to synthesize an accurate 909 kind of open hi-hat, because at Roland, when they made the 909 drum machine, they sampled acoustic hi-hat sounds and, you know, they just used it up in their machine. And that was because they found it pretty hard to synthesize, like using a real synthesizer, a real acoustic sounding hi-hat sound. And let me show you the loop itself. So this little loop here contains only operators. So as you can hear, we have this open hi-hat stuff here. And it contains two layers, a metallic layer and a noisy layer. So the noise is really just a noise. So as you can see, I use a white noise here, and I use a band-pass filter. There is nothing too much here we should talk about. But the metallic layer is a lot more interesting because, you know, this is the hardest part, to create an accurate open hi-hat, and this was the goal. I tried to create my own, and I think it's pretty accurate. It sounds pretty good. It's not that complicated, but, you know, to get to this point where I would say, okay, this is nice, was a pretty long journey. It really was. So I use a sine wave on course 13, and this is always the point. You want to use a very high pitch, a sine wave or a square wave or anything really, but the starting point should always be a very high pitch, and you want to modulate it with another stuff. It doesn't really matter which one, but you want to add some FM-y kind of tone to that already very high pitch sound. So I use a sine wave with a very low course, this time at 0.5. And to avoid to create a tonal kind of sound, I had to detune all the sounds and all the operators. So as you can see, the first one is detuned to 150, 130 and 14 again. So these are pretty detuned sound, and the purpose of that is to, you know, create an untonal kind of tone to it. So this is very important. As I said before, I use a sine wave on course 0.5 to modulate it, and I use a square wave this time on course 1, then this will give some very high, harsh kind of tone to it. And on the last step, I use an even higher course, and this time it is 39, and it is again another sine wave, and all together they sound pretty well. So let me show you how they sound without the effects. And of course I applied a pitch envelope to add some attacks, add some transition to the sound. So without the effects, this is how it sounds. And a very important part here is the high pass filter, because it contains too much lows, you know, you need to filter it out. But to be honest, I like this middle bass kind of tone to it, so I didn't filter out, you know, very high, only at about 200 Hertz. So the effects, I use a chorus to add some, well, even more organic and even less tonal kind of sound to it. You know, it adds only some voices to it and adds some randomness. Now the EQ here is very important. I had to filter out the very lows, like at around 1000 Hertz, and I boosted the very highs to add that very metallic and ear-bleeding kind of tone to it. The second step was, well, the third step was a glue compressor, and the only purpose here is to add a very cool transition to it. You know, we don't want to have some sloppy kind of open hi-hat, but we want an effect where, like, to mimic the sound when the drummer hits the hi-hats pretty hard. Okay, and another EQ after that, because compressions, even especially multiband compressors, always boost up like frequencies what we don't want, especially very low. So I had to remove them again and add some adjustment at around, well, 3000 Hertz. And the purpose of this is to add some presence, because if we don't do this, I mean, if I didn't boost up at around 3000 Hertz, the hi-hat would not cut through the mix. All you would hear is just, you know, some very strange mud on the top end. So boosting at around 3000 Hertz gives some very nice presence to the sound. Okay, and the last step was a utility to pull back the width of the sound, so we don't want too much stereo information, which is given by the chorus. So all together, and after all the process, it sounds this. But I found it a little too weak, so I added a noise layer. Well, like it's a simple white noise, but with some bandpass filtering and some EQing after that, to add some, well, more middle frequency to it. Well, almost the same what I did here at the last EQ8, you know, where I boosted up at around 3000 Hertz. I try to follow the same, but this time at around 5000 Hertz, and all together they sound this. But of course, it's really upon our taste if we like it or not. And this is the open hi-hat. I think altogether, of course, I use the operator for the close hi-hat and the clap too. I have 3 layers here. But the more important part here and the most exciting and interesting part here is to synthesize an open hi-hat, because, you know, synthesizing a clap is not a big deal, but a real accurate open hi-hat is just a little more complicated. But I think this is a pretty nice sound. I think I can be proud, and I am, to be honest. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and see you next time, guys. Bye bye.